and welcome. I'm Monica Price and you're watching Cuppa TV. On today's show, it's a vibrant mix of chat, cookery and comedy. Local comedian Sheila M tells us how she splits her time between her two passions. We're talking and tasting exceedingly lovely cakes with Bake Off's Christine Wallace, and thriller writer Helen Blekinsop pops in for a chat. Now, my first guest is a female comedian with more than one string to her bow. In the evenings, she's a stand-up entertainer, delivering razor-sharp one-liners. And in the day, she's a qualified counsellor. Now, that's quite an interesting combination. So how does she split her time between her two passions? Let's find out as we welcome the very talented Sheila M. Sheila, lovely to see you again. Thank you so much for coming back.
Lovely to be back.
It was wonderful to see you the first time because we talked about your role as a female comedian.
Yes.
But now we want to talk about your role as a counsellor. So
yeah.
Tell me, how did you start? What made you decide to become a counsellor?
Yeah, well, basically it was through personal experiences that when I was in my 20s, I started to experience panic attacks and severe anxiety. And I was diagnosed with having depression. And I was given medication for it, but I thought to myself, if I'm depressed, I want to know why. So I went to a counsellor, and I went to a very good counsellor. And I thought, you know, I dealt with that process at that time. And when it came to like the entertainment, there wasn't this full-time stability. And I thought, what else can I do that also interests me? And the whole human psychology, why we do the things we do, really interests me. And I just thought it'd be lovely to give back what was given to me.
Now, isn't that fascinating? So does that help you with your role as a comedian as well?
Yes, absolutely. That it encourages me not to care what other people think, because by counselling other people and going through the whole counselling training, you really learn how much time and energy is wasted worrying about what other people think. Whereas really, you know, it's about creating your own happiness and just doing what feels right for you.
It's a very interesting subject, isn't it, depression? Because it's that kind of that taboo word almost, isn't it, depression? Do you feel that that's better now than it ever was, or are people still frightened of that word, depression?
It's definitely getting better, definitely getting better, thank God. And it's something that I feel very passionate about because myself having been diagnosed with depression and dealing with depression for the majority of my life and being able to manage it, it's something that I feel passionate about talking about to kind of normalise it, because really most people have been through depression at some point in their life, they just didn't realise it.
Yes, it is, and I think about having that experience, you had a good counsellor by the sound of it yourself.
Yes, I did.
So you're taking that experience and helping other people as well.
Yes.
So who are the people that you see?
I see all kinds of people from all different walks of life, people in the corporate section, just anybody who's struggling and they don't know why and they want to know why. And
are there sort of tips that you give them to help them?
That's the interesting thing about being a counsellor, is that you're actually not there to advise them. What you do is you give them that space and kind of skill type of questions so they can come up with their own solutions. Because they know what's best for them. But sometimes when that black cloud of depression is over you, you can't think clearly.
And as a comedian, have you used your depression in some of your lines for, you know, as a comedian? Have you actually churned that around?
I absolutely have, and especially with human behaviour. And I've decided to fuse the two. So I've got a show coming up where I've combined mental health with humour.
Wonderful.
Because humour is a fantastic coping mechanism. And a lot of times, you know, people that work in very serious jobs like ambulance drivers, stuff like that, they've got a really wicked, dark sense of humour to cope with the seriousness of life.
I mean, it is a seriousness of life. I mean, I think people's lives are very hectic, aren't they? Very busy.
Yeah.
And I think as well, we talk about depression, as we've just said, it's something that we need to talk about more. Do you feel that that's a subject still that we don't talk about enough?
Absolutely, Monica. I'm really hoping to change that. I've just written a book. I'm about to publish it. Yeah.
Brilliant. Tell us about that.
And the title is called The Power of Knowing You. And what I've done is I've disclosed about my own personal upbringing and where my depression came from. And I'm hoping that as a result, that'll help other people to make sense of their worlds.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Again, it's giving that something so people can read that, take it home and read it. And do you find as well, is it, because a lot of comedians do suffer from depression?
Yes.
Have you got your own personal view on that as to why?
Well, yeah, I mean, I can only talk from my own personal experiences, but definitely for me, coping, like humour was a fantastic coping mechanism for me. I mean, I did love to naturally entertain, but definitely humour, yeah, that without a doubt was a coping mechanism, and it was something I was good at, and I think it just kind of amalgamated into something I really wanted to do.
And when you're on the stage, do you forget about everything? Do you sort of switch everything off and just concentrate on being a comedian? Is that something when you're on the stage, you know, you can just...
Do you know, it's funny that when I started out doing comedy, I was very different to the person on stage. You know, it was like a persona. Now I'm exactly the same person. That I'm that comfortable in my own skin, and honestly, it's true being a counsellor.
Yeah, it's great. And do you work all over the West Midlands?
I do indeed, yeah.
Fantastic. And any ages?
And well, we'll say 16 plus. I'm not qualified to counsel children, so I would refer that work on.
Yes.
But I do it via Skype, so it doesn't matter where the client is, you know.
And would you say that counselling has a significant impact on somebody that may be suffering from depression?
Without a doubt. And I can say that personally, and the difference I see in my clients, wow, to see somebody grow and become their own person and just shine through without any of the rubbish holding them back is incredible.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So it's something you're going to continue to do.
Too right.
And use it in your comedy sketches as well. And maybe put it a bit in your singing, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
So again, it's obviously part of you, but how wonderful that you've managed to put it all together and actually bring the good out of it, really.
Yes, that's the plan.
Is that how you feel?
Absolutely. It's just been a natural progression. I mean, some people think, what? Comedian, counsellor, what? But, you know, comedy is tragedy over time.
Yes.
We laugh about stuff, but we weren't laughing at the time.
No. Absolutely. Well, Sheila, it's been lovely to have you on again.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you.
Cheers.
Now, my next guest started baking at the tender age of just 6 years old, watching her grandmother and mother in the kitchen. Since then, she's been delighting her family and friends with her amazing cakes, and her baking skills were put to the test on the Great British Bake Off, where she reached the quarter-final stage. It's a very warm Cuppa TV welcome to star baker Christine Wallace.
Thank
Chris,
you, Monica.
wonderful to see you. Thank you so much.
It's
And
a
can I say,
pleasure.
we have to put our eyes down to the cake. Look at this amazing cake you've made.
That's just something I threw together, Monica.
Did you make all of these as well?
I did. I did.
That's
They're
incredible.
really fiddly. In fact, they take longer to make than sort of a two-tier cake.
I can't, I mean, it's just amazing. And can I just say that all the crew are waiting with bated breath for us to finish so they can cut this cake
It
and we
sounds
can
like
have
the
some.
bake-off because all the crew used to eat everything there.
It's wonderful. I mean, it's just incredible.
Thank you.
So you've been baking since you were 6 years old.
Yes,
So
yes, I have.
has it something that's always been a passion to you?
Well, my father was in the Air Force, and whenever we came back from abroad, we always stayed with my grandmother, and she was a baker through necessity. And I can remember even now standing at the kitchen table, which was sort of here then, and watching her bake. And from then I just got the passion for baking.
So you started at very early
I
age.
did.
And then watched it as you grew up. And then did you bake as you grew up?
Well, I sort of, when I got into my teens, baking, you know, it wasn't really the thing to do. It was going out and having fun. And then when I got into my 20s and got married, then I got back into it and love it.
And then, of course, you entered that wonderful Great British Bake Off.
I was bullied into that,
Bullied
Monica.
into that.
Yes.
Now tell us about that. Did you fill in the application form?
I did, but
Right.
I'd been quite ill the year before, so I lost a lot of confidence. So when my niece said to me, you must go in for the British Bake Off, so I couldn't cook in front of cameras and, oh no, I couldn't do that. She kept on and on ringing me up saying, have you filled in the form yet? So I filled it in and sent it off because I knew thousands apply.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, doing the lottery, you do it and you
It's
think you never win.
incredible.
So I thought I'd never get onto it, so I didn't have to worry.
Isn't that amazing? But you did.
But I did.
You did.
I forgot all about it. It was in December. In February, I got a call early one evening, and this guy said, is that Christine? I thought it was PPI or something I didn't want, you know, somebody I didn't want to speak to. And he said, this is Alex here from the Great British Bake Off. Can I talk to you about your application form?
How?
And it went from there.
Did you think you'd get through? Did you have any expectations at all?
No, absolutely not.
Isn't that incredible?
Absolutely not. And as each stage happened, and I got to audition, then when it got down to the last 30, I thought, well, this is a bit scary because there were 15,000
I mean,
applicants.
it is. I was looking at the statistics.
Yeah.
There are at least 15,000 people
There
who
were
apply
that year.
every year.
Yeah.
I mean, so you've done incredibly well.
Well, I
to get
surprised
through.
even myself.
And did it help you with your confidence?
Oh,
When you were on there?
the whole thing gave me my life back.
So it's something that you continue to do. You reached the quarterfinals.
Yes.
So tell us about that. Was that quite scary?
Well, all I wanted to do, Monica, was get past the first programme.
Yes.
I didn't want the humiliation of going out in the first one. I thought, if I can get to programme 3, and if I could get Star Baker, wouldn't that be a dream?
Wouldn't that be wonderful?
But to get to the quarterfinals and 2 Star Bakers
That was just incredible.
more than I could ever hope for.
And why do you think the show took off in such a big way?
I think it's because it represents the sort of family life, and we've all been through a bit of a tough time with the recession, and people started cooking more at home, and it's something the whole family can do.
Is it something that's completely taken off, isn't it? I mean, the series has just spurred so many people to take up baking.
Yeah, especially children. Children are loving baking.
Really?
I judge so many bake-offs in schools.
Oh, see, and that's
children.
wonderful though, isn't it? Because again, it's a life skill.
Oh, it is.
Would you consider it a life skill, doing what
absolutely.
you do?
Yes.
Yeah, and I mean, it's something that, you know, we watch it, so many people watch it, and you said it's changed your life, and we'll talk about that a bit later on. Oh, well, Chris, it's just great. We're going to have a quick break there, and come back and join me with Chris after the break. Welcome back. I'm still here with Christine Wallace from the Great British Bake Off. Chris, it's been fascinating to speak to you so far, but let's talk about now how you feel the Great British Bake Off has changed us as a nation.
Okay.
And if you feel it has changed us as a nation, are we baking more now because of the series?
We are definitely baking more because of the series. People love it. All ages love it. I think it's because it hasn't got some of the hardness maybe of some of the other reality TV programmes. And having done it, I mean, they don't set out to make a fool of you.
Yeah.
If you drop your cake, they'll film it. If you cry, they'll film you. Obviously, it's good TV. But the whole thing, the crew, they're so caring and nice, and I think people pick up on that.
I think so as well, because having watched it myself, you pick up on the fact it all seems like you get almost like one big happy family.
We do, and we do genuinely help each other when we're on the show.
And that's great though, isn't it?
It is,
Makes
although, you know, it's still competitive.
Yes.
And
did you find it very competitive?
Oh, well, yes, but we did so sort of secretly. Because inside, if you hadn't done too well yourself, you just prayed that someone else had done worse.
Yes. Now, some psychologists have said that, you know, baking represents nostalgia and it's very calming, a very calming thing to do. Would you agree with that?
I would totally agree with that. I think it's nostalgic in the way that back in the 50s, wives didn't really work, did they? They stayed at home and they looked after the home and the husband, and they baked. That's what they did. And that's sort of coming back in the nostalgia. Yes.
Do you think it's something uniquely British? Do you think it's something that's just...
It may have been sort of uniquely British a few years ago, but I think now it's worldwide.
It is, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And do you still continue to bake? Obviously you do.
I love it, Monica.
Really?
I shut myself in the kitchen, I put my favourite music on, and I bake, and I just lose myself in it.
Yeah. It's again, and you do you have to have total sort of peace and quiet? You know, obviously you have your music on, but is it just you?
It's just me, but I don't necessarily need peace and quiet.
No.
But it's just something I love doing still.
Oh, that's great.
Yes.
And you still now tell us a little bit about what you're actually doing now. So since the show,
Well,
what
since
have you
the
been
show,
doing?
life's changed enormously.
Tell me about
I mean,
it.
we
What are
all
you doing?
know that it may change a bit, but I've got a radio programme on BBC Radio Oxford on a Sunday called Garden Cafe, and I do that. I do lots of festivals. So I've got going to a festival in a couple of weeks down in Exeter, Dorchester, Abingdon. I judge bake-offs all over the country. I talk to women's institutes. So many things.
Isn't that great? And again, women's institutes. Now there was a lovely area of where women get together and traditionally bake.
Yes.
So again, it's very good, I think, because you've gone to all ages now. You know, I think, as you said before, children, young students, everybody's baking now, which I think is great.
They are. They love it. And as I say, working with the children is fantastic. And I've also done some work with sort of dysfunctional youngsters, early teens.
Tell us about that.
That was fascinating. In fact, it's one of the best things I've done since the Bake Off.
Really?
In terms of being so satisfying. And they're a little bit wild and unruly, but in the kitchen, they buckled down, they had fun.
Yeah.
And the organisers said, don't expect a thank you because they don't do that. And they hugged me and said, can you come back and do another session? And I found that so rewarding.
What is it, do you think, then? Because you're cooking, you're baking. Why? Why do you think it is?
Well, I think they were achieving something. They were achieving an end result. They're not really achievers. And I did a certificate for the one with the best cake, and she'd never had a certificate before.
See, that's wonderful,
So
isn't it?
that's
'Cause
why
you're
they
giving them
enjoyed it.
something. And a life skill, of course, which is just
Yes.
amazing. So you judge at baking events.
Yes.
Now, how do you do that? Do you have to keep a very Do you look at it and think that's not a very good cake?
I do think that. I do
Tell
think
us
that,
honestly,
but I
Chris,
but I
what
don't
do you think?
say it because a lot of
Yes.
people who've made all that are in the room.
Yes.
And you know, you might not think it's a good cake, but they've probably done it, spent hours on it.
Yes.
So I don't show any emotion on my face at all, even if I did taste the worst thing ever.
What's the worst thing you've ever tasted?
It was a loaf of bread in a bake-off. It was the only loaf in the category.
Right.
And I tasted it. I can't describe what it tasted of, Monica. It was indescribable. It was so dreadful. And because it was the only loaf in the category, it had to win. And I had to present a rosette, a certificate for this ghastly piece of baking.
Well, let's hope
But
you
most
don't
of the
have to
time
do
it's
that.
good, I have
Oh,
to say,
well, that's
most of the
good.
time. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we're going to so look forward to eating your cake after you've left
I
here
hope you
today.
enjoy
Well, you
it.
can join us, in fact. But Chris, it's been so lovely to speak
Well,
to you today.
thank you for asking me.
And I really hope, you know, and wish you well for all your future projects.
Thank you so
And,
much.
You know, thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
My next guest trained as an accountant in Birmingham, but she was actually more interested in writing thrillers than ledgers, and most of her writings are actually set in that world. Let's find out how she made the jump from number cruncher to thriller writer. Please say a very big hello to writer Helen Blekinsop. Helen, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi Monica, it's lovely to be here.
Thank you, and you've brought obviously your books here to show us, but we'll talk about that in a moment. So you've written 2 books, is that right?
That's right, and I'm working on a third.
Fantastic. And is it something that you've always wanted to do, Helen, writing?
Oh, totally. From when I was so high, even before I could read or write, I used to make up stories for my younger siblings and they loved them. They were totally uncritical. They
Really?
absolutely loved my stories.
It sounds very fascinating. Now, Up in Smoke was based in Birmingham, is that right?
That's right,
And
it's
tell us
set
a
in a
little bit-
fictional tobacco company
Fantastic.
in Birmingham.
And you've got a love of Birmingham, Helen.
It's my number one city. I
Fantastic.
absolutely adore Birmingham.
So again, why did you set your first novel in a tobacco company? Was that an idea you had for a long time, or was that something you came up with just being in Birmingham?
It's an idea that I'd had for a long time, Monica. It's a fascinating industry. It's quite a secretive one in some ways, and I knew quite a lot about it, so I thought it would be an opportunity to tell a good story.
And how long have you been an author? How long have you actually been in publishing?
I published Up in Smoke 2 years ago, and after the interview last year, and the current book, The Marrying Kind, will be published this summer. So I'm trying to get 1 book a year out.
Oh, fantastic.
They're always about the corporate world.
Yes.
So they're always about people in offices. And I'm sure sometimes people think about murdering each other and
Yes.
they don't really do it. But in my books they do.
Is that from your corporate experience as an accountant? You draw on that, do you? Do you draw on your experiences?
I do. I don't write about things that actually happened, but I write about things that might happen if somebody went just a little bit too far and a chain of events started off and gathered an unstoppable momentum. So, for example, in After the Interview, a guy makes a really stupid mistake and he gets blackmailed for it. And then in order to pay his blackmailer, he starts a fraud. And it just gets worse and worse and worse.
Oh, fantastic. So again, it's all the things maybe that go on in offices that people maybe think about, but they don't actually do, of course.
Luckily,
yes.
people are basically honest, or
Yes.
luckily the people I've worked with have been.
You publish yourself as well, don't you, Helen? So that's another thing. Again, why did you start to publish yourself, or why did you decide to publish yourself?
Because it's never been easier than these days in the digital age, Monica.
Really? How do you go about it? How do you do it?
Okay. The writing process itself is a lot of daydreaming. I do a lot of daydreaming. I think about a plot. I write out a chapter plan, then I write it. When I've got a draft up together, I then put it out to about 20 readers to give me feedback on.
That's good.
And
Is
then
that
I
important?
rewrite.
Is that important that you get your feedback right at the very beginning?
Absolutely, because it gives me an opportunity to make changes and make the plot and the way it's written crisper, tighter, more interesting, more colourful. I really appreciate the feedback that I get from readers. And it's only when I've had that and I'm happy with the final version that I'll put it out there for the public to read. And that is simply a matter of uploading it to the printer's websites. It's very easy to
It's
do.
incredibly easy now, isn't it? So again, would you recommend for any budding writers out there that they should do what you've done? Just write your story and publish it yourself. Would you say that was a good thing to do?
Certainly consider it. Everybody wants to do things differently, I think. It's horses for courses. It suits me because having worked as an accountant, I'm really familiar with quite techie, computer-orientated stuff. So, you know, it's not hard for me to get a file up together to upload. But it might be harder for people who just like to write a story and aren't interested in the technical
And when you're
side.
writing, Helen, do you have to take yourself away somewhere and just totally concentrate on that, or do you have music? How do you write?
I can write anywhere. I
Really?
was brought up in a big family, don't
Yes.
forget. I used to do my homework with the radio blaring loud to drown out the sound of my siblings. So I can work in a coffee shop, I can write on a train, write on a plane, write on a bus. I can write right now.
And Helen, tell us the name of your next book that you're just about to publish soon.
It's called The Marrying Kind.
Okay, and that's coming out very shortly, is it?
It will come out properly in July.
Fantastic.
So I shall have a draft up together at the end of this month, but then it's got to go to my readers for feedback.
Okay, well,
And in true corporate style, I
Yes.
give them feedback questionnaire.
yes. Oh,
to fill in.
fantastic. Well, we will look forward to that. Helen, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a pleasure to meet you. Thank you, and wish you every success with your new book.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Well, that's all we have time for today. My very special thanks to all of my guests, Sheila M, Christine Wallace and Helen Blenkinsop. If you would like to get in touch with us, you can join us on Facebook or Twitter at Big Centre TV or email the show. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you for watching. Until next time, bye-bye.